Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Welcome back, or welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I am so delighted that you're here today to share in this episode as we continue to move our way through this health crisis. As you may know, I usually only ever record in-person conversations, but due to the pandemic, I am recording remotely for the time being. And I've invited back some of my previous guests to have a short chat about topics that just might help us get through this very trying time. And today is one of those previous guests. Hopefully you had a chance to listen to last week's episode with Laura Musikansky. Laura studies happiness and all sorts of data points about us feeling happy. Without going into too much detail, I will tell you that one of the ways in which you can better understand your happiness or lack thereof is to get in touch with your feelings. And that's both happy and sad. And one very simple, but maybe not easy, way to do that is to start journaling. And today's guest has a lot to say about that very topic, about journaling. Now, before I tell you about her, just a quick reminder that if you enjoy the show and would like to show your support, you can do so with a donation through Patreon. You can become part of our community there. You'll have access to bonus content and have the ability to ask questions of guests. And I will tell you that the support I receive from this small but mighty community on Patreon is invaluable. These folks are stepping up and telling me that the mission of the show to bring these conversations with bold women is important to them. They understand the value of highlighting these stories, especially at a time when we are all feeling so much darkness around us. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/bebold. And if you'd prefer to make a one-time donation, you can do that too. You can use Venmo or PayPal, and that information is all on the Patreon page. Okay, today's guest is Dierdre Wolownick. You might remember Dierdre from episode number 83. She is the author of The Sharp End of Life, as well as many other books. She's the oldest woman to have climbed El Capitan, and she happens to have a great teacher. Her son, Alex Honnold, helped her in that endeavor, but she is mighty all on her own. And Dierdre is also a lifelong journaler. By the way, you can order a copy of Dierdre's book, The Sharp End of Life, and get a 25% discount by going to mountaineersbooks.org and enter Time to Read, that's all one word, as the promo code at checkout. And I'm going to provide you with a link in the show notes for that. Now, I've been journaling the majority of my life, and for me, it started nearly 30 years ago when I began traveling. So what I've done is I've documented all of my trips that I've taken, but I also journal outside of that travel time. It's been a wonderful way for me to get my thoughts down, and especially like over the past 30 years, of course, but also during this time of pandemic, I've been able to still journal and just still kind of think through processes and think through and write out things that are going on around me and within me. Dierdre and I talk about how journaling can be an excellent way to get to know yourself and to help you get through this difficult time. Really through any difficult time, but particularly now. But she also talks about how this simple tool can help with other parts of your life too, and how there's a crossover with that. And she gives some great tips on how to get started, because I know this is not easy for everyone. I hope this inspires you to set pen to paper and start to journal for the first time if you've never done it before, or just to recommit yourself to it if you're not already doing it on a regular basis. With that, please enjoy this conversation with Dierdre Wolownick. Dierdre, thanks so much for joining me today. And I am so delighted that you had actually suggested this, because it's not something that I would normally have thought of. Like I have talked about journaling in many episodes before because I find it of such value, but I hadn't thought about tackling it kind of as as a topic for one of these shorter episodes as we're going through this pandemic. And so I'm just so delighted that you brought it up because I know you have years of experience in doing it. And I will encourage people to go back to episode number 83, where we originally spoke, and they can get more of a background on you. And we've been promising each other that we're going to talk again and that you're going to get me on the climbing wall.
One of these days.
One of these days, I know when this thing lifts and you come to Seattle, we're going to do all sorts of fun things, I know. But today, let's focus on journaling. And what I'd love to know is, how do you define journaling?
It's a pretty broad term. Basically, it just means sitting down and writing about anything that's important to you, anything that you want to write about. Writing about life, writing about whatever you want. And as you go through the process, it will tailor itself to meet your needs. If you want to put it, that's one way to put it. It will tailor itself to do what you need it to do the more you do it.
You know, I've seen people say, and I've heard people say that I just can't journal, like that I've tried and I can't do it. What do you think is the blocker for people?
Oh, there are so many things that would stop you from doing that. A reticence about thinking about these hard things. I mean, it can be very daunting to write in a journal. You have to admit that you want to and that you need to and that it will be good. And sometimes it doesn't seem like it's being good to you. Sometimes it's pretty raw, and sometimes it can be rough to write in a journal. You can wind up in tears. You can wind up sobbing. You can wind up on the floor. It's like going to a shrink, really, in so many ways. And you have to be ready for it. And you have to be open to it.
So that's probably the biggest thing, is that once you sit down and you start writing, it just becomes raw. That's probably the biggest stopper for people, you think?
Yeah, well, in this country, we're not really ever guided or taught to get in touch with what's really important. I mean, we certainly don't learn that in school. It's a hands-off kind of country, you know, and journaling is definitely hands-on. And you have to be ready for what it will open you to.
Have you seen other countries or experienced something in other countries where it is more of a normal or an easier thing to do?
Not so much that it's more normal or easier, but I'm going to put myself out there and say most other countries, because I've lived and traveled in many countries, and I mean, not most, obviously, but I have the impression from talking with people and being an educator in several places that most other countries teach their citizens to write in their own language much, much better than we do here, which is very unfortunate. And journaling is writing. So that goes along with the skill of writing goes along with it. If you've never written anything, you can easily get through school here without ever writing anything and without understanding your own language. And that's another topic for another day. But if you're one of those people who, you know, it's kind of skated through and you never got into writing and you don't like it, journaling is going to be a foreign country.
How long have you been journaling?
All my life, all my remembered life, basically.
Mm-hmm. So 29 years.
At least. At least.
Yeah. How has it helped you?
Oh, so many ways. That's more than we have time for. But it helps you understand what's going on around you. And that's not something we have a lot of help with in this country, really. You know, we are told what we are supposed to be doing at every age and what drugs we're supposed to be taking and you know, where our life is supposed to be and what we're supposed to wear and all that. We're told this. You know, if we are television watchers, and most Americans, unfortunately, are, we are told this at every step of the way through life. And journaling puts it all in question. So journaling can change your life completely. It can just give you a few little insights into parts of it. It is really the key to understanding what's going on in the world and in your world, in your life, in your head, in your family, etc.
Of course, you've heard of the artist's way.
Yes.
So in that, for listeners, the book encourages you, I think it's Julia Cameron, she encourages you to sit down and write 3 pages a day. Mm-hmm. Just, it can be nonsense. Mm-hmm. It can be heartfelt, it can be important stuff, or it could just be nonsense. Mm-hmm. Do you think that is intimidating? Like, do you think that approach, the 3 pages a day, isn't intimidating? Because I'm just thinking.
That's very intimidating. Yes. If you've gone through school here, like I said, and, skated by without ever writing in any depth, or you're not good at your own language, which most of my students have fit that category. That's very intimidating. Yeah, 3 pages is an awful lot. One page, one loose leaf page of paper is roughly translates to about 250 words, more or less. Even that, if you're not in this habit yet and hoping to try it out, even that is daunting. I would never journaling is not for limits. Journaling is definitely not for limits. Journaling is where you discover your limits. You don't set them for yourself. So you should set a time, like every day at 8 p.m. or something like that. You should set a time to start. Yes, that's not a limit, but that's just a beginning, a launching, if you will. So you set your launch time for whenever you want, once a day, once a week, or whenever you feel like it. But it's better to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to do this every 2 days. I'm going to do this every Saturday, whatever. That's not a limit. That's a launch. Once you launch, you should never set a limit. Your purpose is to explore. And explorers don't set limits on themselves. Explorers are open to whatever's going to happen. And that's what you want in your journal. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And you're just there to explore.
I have a recurring task that comes up on my phone that actually just says journal. Uh-huh. And I have next to each of my tasks, I have the amount of time that I think it would take. Mm-hmm. So mine comes up and it says journal 20 minutes. Uh-huh. And I have that on there, not as a limit, but just as a reminder.
Yes.
Yes. Uh-huh. And I think that 20 minutes isn't a lot of time. I think it's enough time to put something that I feel is valuable, to write something down that's valuable. But some days it's 5 minutes and some days it's 35 minutes.
Right. I was just going to say that. Yeah. 20 minutes is dreaming. You have no idea. You have no idea when you start out exploring how long it's going to take. And you could get really bummed by what you're writing and just stop after 3 minutes. You go back to it the next day or something.
What I find is when I journal is that what I write then sticks with me through the day. Mm-hmm. And then I can reflect back on it. I can go for a run or I can go for a walk and then just kind of reflect back on that. And it's just kind of a nice way. I'm a morning journaler, and it's a nice way to kind of start the day. So your book, Sharp End of Life, came out. It was last year. Mm-hmm. Did you use your journaling as kind of a basis for the book?
Oh, yeah. The book covers a lot of years, and they were very volatile years in my life. And so, I had to go back many times. I had to go back and see what I had written for that period of time. And it was often quite a surprise. It was often a surprise. You forget a lot of life. You forget a lot of what goes on, or you change it subtly in subtle ways, or you drop out the parts that you don't want to
right. Some of it's
carry on. Yeah,
it's like self-preservation, right?
Exactly.
You forget that just to preserve yourself.
Yeah. So I used that quite a bit as I was going through the manuscript. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Could you have written the book without those journals?
No, absolutely not. Because some of the things, as I mentioned, I was remembering wrong, or some of the things I was remembering partially. And then I would look at what I had actually written, and they say, "Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh right, he did that too. Yeah." So no, I could not have. It would not be the same book at all.
The interesting thing about that is that we don't have to end up with a book at some point in our life to still have that value of the journaling. So, what do you think the benefits are, just kind of in general, for people, like?
Oh goodness,
the average person out there.
Clarity, the biggest benefit perhaps is clarity. Clarity about what's going on around you, either in the world or in your house or in your classroom or in your doctor's office, whatever you do. Clarity. It can help you understand, somebody just said this to me. I wonder why, and I wonder, what, and you can trace that through. And clarity about anything. Clarity and clarity is very important in life. Very, very important. And just reinforcement, if you will. I'm not sure that's the right word for it, but, I was thinking of doing this. I wonder if that's the right thing for me. And then you explore that. It's a tool that can do just about whatever you need in your life. And I can't
And
stress
sometimes
that
what
enough.
you don't need.
Yeah, right. That's true. Or don't realize that you need.
Right. Yeah. I think epiphanies can really be born out of, well, just getting to know yourself, right?
Yes. A lot of anguish goes into that. A lot of thrashing it out sometimes, digging deep.
Would you say that pretty much everyone could benefit from it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It should be part of schooling, but that's probably never going to happen. But yeah, absolutely. It provides so many other tools for our life.
In what way?
Psychological tools. You can begin to understand how you are understanding. If that makes any sense. It can help you learn how to explore things. The process you go through to write about, say, buying a new house or whatever you want to write about. That process can help you with other decisions through your lifetime, or can guide you to other processes. It's a process-driven tool. And so it has so many applications to so many parts of life that it's like having your own shrink at your disposal whenever you need it for free, as long as you want. And, it's just an amazing tool.
Did you know that when you were journaling early on that is what, no. that was what you were going through?
No.
Kind of being your own shrink?
No, I grew up, without going into the book and my story, I grew up basically alone. I was kind of sequestered at home. I was my mother's helper. She was handicapped and she was very, very domineering. And I aimed to please, in all things. I just stayed home and helped my mother, and I painted and I played the piano, quiet things, home things. And so people were like a mystery to me. So I started writing about life, about what was going on, what I saw other people doing, things like that. And I didn't know then that it was a tool. I was just puzzling, on paper. And I was, at heart, I was a writer, so I loved writing anyway. And that probably helped launch me into this lifelong journaling thing, because I was a writer at heart anyway. But no, I didn't know at the beginning. I was just exploring my own thoughts, and I didn't think about that process until years and years later when I realized what I was doing. But no, it's at the beginning. It's a very raw process. You just do it. You're a child when you begin journaling.
When did you start? Was it during that time with your mother, or was it in your marriage?
Like high school maybe.
Did you keep those journals?
I do have them. Yeah.
Oh, that's painful right there.
Well, yes and no, because at that stage of your journaling process, you are not terribly open with yourself. That's one way to put it. I didn't dig very deeply back then. I just talked about the surface stuff, where I was, who was doing what, where we were going, and as the years progress in the journaling, it gets deeper and deeper. So it's a skill like any other. You get better and better at it.
Yeah, and do you think that a person can dive in if they're already an introspective person? Do you think that they can dive in and get deep immediately?
Absolutely. I started very superficially. I was a child, and so I didn't know anything, basically. So absolutely, if you are already an adult, your journaling will be totally different than some high school kid who's sequestered at home, So absolutely, you can dive right in and begin a real exploration, a real beneficial exploration.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Not only is it maybe an age, kind of a developmental thing where we learn to go a little bit deeper, but also maybe just through practice, we learn to go a little bit deeper as well. I've kept like 30 years of journals from my travels, and I've been working on a book for quite a while myself, but I went through those journals, and there was a time when I almost threw them all out, and I happened to keep them. And I went through them, and like you, my memory was different. And
Yeah.
I thought that they were going to be very superficial and very, I can't believe this happened to me, and just kind of maybe a little bit more complaining or a little bit more negative. But I went through there and I was like, wow, there's some really interesting insights
Right.
in
Right.
this that I had no idea that, like you said, you would never remember otherwise.
Right.
Like you
Exactly.
just, 30 years of travel, there were a lot of experiences.
Well, that's the thing. We have insights all the time as we travel through life, and 10 minutes later, they're gone. But if you sit and write about them, then 15 years later, you can go back and say, wow, I was pretty smart. Wow, I was right on. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. But if you start younger, you don't have the emotional, solidity, if you will, to jump in and explore these things. And children don't realize, young people, even teens, don't realize that they have problems. I'm not saying that right. They don't realize that things can be different than they are. It's like that old book, The Way It's Supposed to Be. Children always assume that the way things are the way they're supposed to be.
Well, adults think the same thing.
A lot of adults do too. Yes. Yeah. But children even more so. And so the journaling will be a different process for a child than for an adult.
I know that there are a lot of benefits, and as you said, kind of moving through our life, there are a lot of times that journaling can be really beneficial. Right now, we are all going through a really difficult time. There's a lot of fear.
Yep.
There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
There's just a lot of doubt. There's a lot of, we just have
a lot of not knowing.
Yeah, a lot of not knowing. We have no idea what's going to happen next week, tomorrow,
Right.
let alone in a month or 6 months or even a year. There's a lot of speculation about all that. How can we use journaling to get us through this time when there's no roadmap, and we don't even, people who are struggling financially don't even know if there's going to be a safety net for them, later in the summer. I know right now people who are on unemployment have a little bit of a safety net, but businesses, small businesses, we just don't know. So how do you utilize that?
Interesting that you used the term, there's no roadmap, because that's very important here. There is no roadmap for journaling. And often we get trapped in a job or a set of duties, called a job, where we're supposed to do this every day. We're supposed to do this every week. We're supposed to do this every Monday, whatever. And we're never supposed to explore whether we want to be doing that or whether it's good for us, or, we're told. It's like television. You're told you're supposed to be like this. Now we're going through a period where that's all gone. And journaling starts there. There is no roadmap for journaling. You can write about whatever you please, whatever scares you, whatever you want, whatever you may not even realize you want. I mean, even financial things. Is XYZ the way I really want to earn my money? Well, maybe not. So you can explore that in a journal. And then you can explore what other ways you could. And then the roads, once you sit down with your pen or your keyboard, ready, the roads are infinite. The way you can go from there is, the possibilities are infinite. And right now we're all starting from scratch right now. We're all learning that we can indeed work at home. We can teach our children at home. We can grow our food. We can, all kinds of things. And 2 months ago, nobody would have written about that in their journal. But this is the time maybe for people to begin journaling and exploring different roads for themselves. What frightens them, what excites them. You can explore all that in your journal, and like I keep saying, it's like a shrink. They're not going to pass judgment. It's not going to judge you for whatever thoughts you put on paper or on your keyboard. It's not going to judge you. You can write whatever you want, and you can be whoever you want in your journal. It's a very freeing kind of activity.
Last week, I spoke with a happiness expert, Laura Musikansky, and she was talking about kind of the ways, right now with all this fear and sadness, she was talking about how we can get into a happier mode. And one of those ways is to understand our fears and to really feel things. Right. And it came to mind that journaling is like the
Yeah,
perfect
the best way to do
antidote
that.
to that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is. It's the best way.
It's a great time. I know not everybody has more time right now. I know some people are working double time, and it's really difficult for them. But I think a lot of people right now have a little bit more time on their hands, so it is a great time to start. What's the process that you would recommend to people? Do you have a process of like how to get started? Do you have some suggestions for that?
Sure, I have suggestions. I've been doing it for many, many years, so I know my process. But the first thing you need to do is earlier on during this talking, you said you are a morning person. You're a morning journal. You know that about yourself. Mm-hmm. Many people don't know that about themselves. When they think most clearly, when they are more prone to sit and ponder rather than go, go, go. I'm a morning person too, but my morning is active. I'll go for a run, or I'll do my gardening and cut the trees and, whatever. My writing usually takes place at night, in the evening. I'm a nocturne person.
Are you up until 1:00 in the morning?
No. I don't mean nocturnal, but you know what a nocturne is in music? An evening piece. Like Chopin.
Okay, right.
Chopin's nocturnes, or I'm a nocturne person. By dinner time, I'm slowing down, and my evenings are not good for go, go, go. They're good for sitting and figuring out and playing the piano, writing my journal, that kind of thing. So first you need to know that about yourself. You can just observe yourself for a week and say, oh yeah, I got a lot done during the morning, go, go, go. And I think I'll sit over a cup of something this evening and write, So you have to figure that out, because you don't want to be rushed or thinking about what you have to do tomorrow while you're writing in your journal. That's not the mood that you want to set for, And you have to be able to block out a little chunk of time, whatever you think is appropriate, whatever you have to work with, depending on your life. If you've got kids at home and you're homeschooling and you're working, and maybe it's only 5 minutes a night, that's fine. Write for those 5 minutes a night. You'd be amazed what you can accomplish in 5 very focused minutes, or 10.
And oftentimes when you realize the value of it, then that extends into the 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Right. But at the beginning, though, don't just say, I'll sit down this evening. Do like you do. Set it on your phone, have a buzzer go off and say, okay, it's time. And then, block everything else out. Also important is the tool you're going to use. Are you a pen writer? Do you love fountain pens? Do you like to write in pencil? I don't recommend pencil because it rubs off after enough years. It'll be gone. Are you a keyboard person? Do you spend all your work day working on a keyboard? Maybe you just keep working on your journal the same way. I used to write by pen all the time. From high school on, I always kept it by pen. And in high school and college, I always kept my journal in French.
Interesting.
So that nobody at home could read it.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And I could think in French just like I think in English. So that works. So if you're bilingual, there's a key for you. Another very important consideration for a journal is the security, the certainty. You want to be absolutely certain that no one is going to ever see this.
Yeah, there's a reason. There's for 16-year-old girls. There's a reason. There's a little lock on those.
A lock on their diary. Exactly.
Those old things. Yeah.
Because most of what you write in your journal or your diary is going to be drivel. It's going to be absolute nauseating drivel, and you have to get that nauseating drivel out of you to get to the gems, to get to the insights. You have to get that nonsense out of you. A lot of us have a lot of nonsense. Some of us more, some less. Some of us can zip right ahead to the important stuff, or the insightful stuff, or the deciding stuff, the things that help us make decisions. And some of us spend years in the drivel, and that's fine. That's fine. You have to get, you can't learn to run unless you learn to walk first. And, it's a process. So, security is very, very important. You have to, if you're bilingual and the rest of your family doesn't speak that language, use that language. That way there's no fear that this might get out, that somebody else might. And especially nowadays, everybody's for one to run that risk with your journal. So keep it somewhere safe, under lock and key if you want, or in another language, or, if you have little kids, up high in the closet in something that you'll hear if they open it. With kids, you never know. A lot of people are saying, I'm too busy. I'm going to just dictate into my phone or whatever, and then I'll transfer. No, that doesn't work. That does not work. Dictating is iffy at best. A lot of words get changed. A lot of whole sentences can get transformed into something. And you look at it later and say, I didn't say that. What was I thinking? When I dictate into my phone, it's never accurate. So I would recommend against that.
I think the only time I could imagine that would work is if you're out and about and you have a thought, you want to dictate it.
Yes.
But then you actually translate
like a note
it.
for yourself.
Right. And then you translate
These are notes for yourself.
Right. Exactly.
Another very important reason not to dictate is writing by hand or on your keyboard and sitting and concentrating on what you're writing slows your brain down. It forces you to think more slowly, more deliberately. And when you're speaking, if you're dictating, you go on and on and on, and that doesn't have the same effect. So you need to focus on your journal, and dictating doesn't allow that really.
You have really inspired me to be more consistent with my journaling. Just hearing this, I think that there's just two parts to it of not only getting deeper in a specific session, so you've got that drivel out of you and then you get kind of into something deeper, but as you're going over time, you could probably get deeper more quickly as you just kind of get used to that.
Well, that's true, but you shouldn't, that should not always be the goal, to get deep and wrestle with these hard problems all the time. You started out by talking about people who say, I can't journal, I can't, and that can happen at the beginning. At the beginning, you do not want to limit yourself or set yourself a definite goal. At the beginning, you might just sit there staring out the window, thinking about what to write. And that's fine too. That's productive as well. Or you might spend your whole 10 minutes writing about not knowing what to write about. I have done that many times. And there's nothing wrong with that. All that means is your brain isn't focused yet enough on what you actually want to go into. That's fine. That's part of the process. Write about anything. Write about what you just had for lunch and how it made you feel, or what it made you remember. Or it doesn't matter what you're writing about, as long as you're writing. As long as you keep, there are writing activities for budding writers. You just put your pen on the paper and start writing, and don't stop until the timer goes off. Just do not stop. And you'll be writing drivel for part of the time. And for part of the time, you won't. But a lot of people who begin journaling, they want the magic to happen right away. And it doesn't. It doesn't for a long time. And so keep that in the back of your mind. Don't make demands of yourself. Don't make demands of your journal. It could be drivel for 6 months. And then the 7th month, all of a sudden, the dam will open and you'll start discovering things. You just never know. It's a process. You have to keep faithful to the process for it to work.
I think it's a nice time to kind of treat yourself to a special journal. Mm-hmm. Something that you enjoy, that brings you joy when you take it out,
when
maybe a special pen. I have a purple gel pen that I use, and it's just like, where's my journal pen? It's very
right.
specific.
It makes it special.
Yeah, it does. It makes it very special.
Or a special place on your hard drive or soft drive or whatever they call it. This keyboard.
Yes, exactly. Dierdre, is there anything else that you would recommend to people as we just kind of wrap up here? Is there anything that I know we could probably talk for an hour and a half about this, but are there any other little tidbits?
A lot of people kind of think that this is a new thing in journaling, but it is not. It's been with us for thousands of years. I just want to read a little quote. You've heard of Robert Louis Stevenson?
Yeah, of course.
The writer, he wrote all kinds of things. Treasure Island, everybody knows Treasure Island. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Anyway, he was a writer all his life. And he said, I always kept 2 books in my pocket, one to read and one to write in. And I think all writers and most successful people keep that one book to write in. And it's just an amazing tool. You'll be happily surprised.
Thanks for that. Gosh, thanks for making the time to chat with me. I know just from our online communications that even for those of us who aren't working necessarily like a frontline or a quote unquote essential job, we're still staying quite busy. I know that you are very busy.
Oh yeah.
Right now, which is really interesting because you have your own projects that you're working on. You haven't you haven't been
I have an essay
dissuaded.
coming out in a magazine in Canada this week.
Oh, that's great.
This month, so
you're just
keeping it going.
You are keeping it going. You're such an inspiration. So thanks for being here and for making the time, in your busy schedule. I appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.
Sure. You've probably heard me on the podcast before talk about the importance of journaling, and you know that I'm already a big advocate. But after chatting with Dierdre, I am doubling down and getting back into a daily habit of it. She reminded me of what an important tool it is that just allows us to reflect and document on these small epiphanies that we have every day, right? But we just don't give them enough time to flourish. I would love to know your experience with journaling and whether this conversation has finally lit a fire under you to get started. Don't forget you can order a copy of Dierdre's book, The Sharp End of Life, and get a 25% discount by going to mountaineersbooks.org and enter time to read, and that's all one word, as the promo at checkout, and I will link to that in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing the uplifting stories from my guests, go to patreon.com/bebold. Patreon supporters get to submit questions for me to ask guests and become part of our private Facebook group, and that is ladies only. They also get access to bonus content, including questions I ask of the guest. Of course, there are other ways to support the show. You can leave feedback on whatever podcast app you're using to listen to these episodes. Make sure that you're subscribed. That actually helps with the show getting higher in search results. And please share this and other episodes with friends. You can find all of the episodes at shesboldpodcast.com/episodes. And there you will also see all the show notes and links to everything that we mention in these episodes as well. To keep up with me and all of my travels when I'm actually traveling, and my running and hiking and all the other adventures that I'm trying to do, which is very limited right now, but I am trying to post some fun photos along the way. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at Beth Whitwa and also Wandergal. Feel free to leave me a message or question at 877-280-5170. I do love me some feedback. You can email me also at beth@shesboldpodcast.com. Ladies, don't forget to join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Be Bold group for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. Be well, and until next time, be bold.